Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Jay Saki Show. I am your host, Jay Saki, Doctor of Cinema, and it looks like I saw another movie. A silent movie. Nosferatu 1922. It has a reputation among film scholars, but for those who don't know, it's an unauthorized film version of Dracula. I'm not sure if it was a film rights thing or they just didn't care, but the Germans made their own Dracula movie, only they called it Nosferatu. And it's not Count Dracula, but instead Count Orlok. Fun fact, I first became aware of this movie about the year 2007. There was a goth girl in my high school who mentioned it. So the premise is it's 1938 and bank and or real estate agency in England gets notified that a certain count in Transylvania wants to buy a house in England. So they send their best man, Thomas Hutter, over to Transylvania to visit the count and finalize the deal. And Thomas gets to the Count's castle. He discovers the Count is not all he seems. And then the story descends into death, madness, and hijinks. So back to Dracula comparisons. This is basically Bram Stoker's Dracula, just with new names for all the characters and some character parts completely omitted. And in some cases things just, are not the same. The ending is different from what's in the book as well as other Dracula movies. So, yeah, like I said before, this is a silent film from 1922. And I haven't really watched a lot of those, or maybe none at all, other than, bits of footage from documentaries about silent films. So you can say I got a bit of an education with this one. Sit down, watch a silent film, and just, take in what it is, take in the sights, take in what it has to offer you. I took in what it had to offer me, and I can honestly say for much of this movie I was very intrigued. For much of it. Not all of it, but it was very enjoyable at the start, seeing these very, very specifically set up shots to make everything look like a photograph. I don't know if all older silent films did that, but you could tell since it was silent. They did a lot of work on the sets in every single shot. And I recall, to reference my favorite movie, Sunset Boulevard from 1950. The titular character, Norma Desmond, has a bit where she talks about back in the old days, we did not need, voices. We had faces. It was all about the faces. Our expressions. And yes, certainly, watching this movie, the characters and the actors were all very expressive, very bug-eyed, very exaggerated, very gasp me oh my. Would you look over there? Point. I will be. You can just see it all, Or, oh, ha 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 ha. To think I was so scared. Ha 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 ha. Gasp, you're going to Count Orlok's castle? Expression, expression, expression. All very well conveyed, if you're grading by expressions. Yeah, so for the first half of this film, I was actually really enjoying it more than I thought I would. I was like, wow, it had this strong gothic horror atmosphere. The visuals were wonderful. Very, very rich visuals. A feast for the eyes, if you will. However, the biggest problem going against this movie is, I know the story, get on with it. So even though maybe there are slower parts that are just, building up the tension, I do know the Dracula story. I read the book. And, I've watched the Bela Lugosi movie. So it's one of those things where if I had no knowledge of Dracula, I might enjoy marinating in the various scenes. But because I have a general idea of where the story is going, I can only enjoy it so much. It would be like if tomorrow, if you were well read in the story of Pride and Prejudice, and if they turned out another Pride and Prejudice movie, you could never really enjoy it because you know the story, you know where it's gonna go. So there's always that little nagging bit and piece of you that is saying, "Get on with it. Get on with it. I know the story." I think I've seen that with quite a few remakes or retellings of various stories over the years where while watching, I guess get the sense of I know the story. If I saw this for the very first time, this would be intriguing, but since I know, or since everyone knows just by cultural osmosis, where's the suspense? I think that's kind of what went through my head when I saw the Tragedy of Macbeth movie that came out a couple years back. For anything that movie had to offer, I just kept thinking, like, I know the story though. So there's always that thing. It would be cool to watch like a Macbeth movie and have no knowledge of what the story's about. That would be fun. But when you have the prior knowledge, you kind of are just going into it for the visuals. So yeah, this movie, straight up, as much as I enjoyed it, there's always that weird sense of I know the story, get on with it. That was always going to hamper it. But still, there were moments where I did not mind marinating in the story. But as, it got to the midway point, I started, nod off a little bit. Just a bit. And the second half was a little schizophrenic. I'm not sure if I was always following everything, or if I was just missing something. But yeah, it comes to a close, and, that's it. I saw it. So do I recommend the movie? How do I say this? This film is definitely an edifice of the past. But was it worth it, Saki? Did watching this movie make you a more complete person? Can you now go forth into the world knowing how to better respect your fellow man? Is your soul now more capable of entering heaven now that you've checked this movie off your list? Maybe not. But it did give me some education, even if just film education. I learned what silent films were like. I learned what filmmakers were capable of back then. And I learned where certain inspirations for some modern movies come from. So I'm glad I saw it. And if you wish to pursue film education in all its forms to round off your knowledge, should you feel that doing so will bring you closer to virtue, then you might just want to check out Nosferatu. Have a good night, everyone.